Welcome to this explainer. You know, every single day we are absolutely saturated by noise. It's everywhere. But today we're diving into a really profound philosophical argument. We're asking, what if the creator of existence communicates through a language we've basically entirely forgotten how to hear? We're talking about a language older than speech, deeper than thought, and one that was present before civilization even existed. Today we're exploring the incredible concept of silence and the idea of finding God in the stillness.
So let's just hit pause for a second. What if the deepest truth doesn't speak through noise at all? We all have this deeply ingrained modern assumption that truth requires words, right? Sentences, loud declarations, arguments. But we have to fundamentally question that today. What if the greatest intelligence behind reality doesn't use words whatsoever? What if a higher power actually bypasses speech entirely?
To understand why this is so radical, you have to look at how we live right now. The average person today processes a staggering 34 gigabytes of data every single day. Just let that sink in. We are talking about constant music, phones and screens glaring at us, social media feeds endlessly scrolling, relentless notifications, just this flowing river of information every second of the day. Think about how overwhelmingly addicted we've become to this barrage. There are voices constantly speaking to us, screens demanding our eyeballs, conversations that just never ever stop. Honestly, modern life has literally never been louder.
Now, let's just take a collective breath here. Let's slow down for a second and look at the ancient world, because they lived entirely differently. For thousands of years, ancient civilizations fiercely, passionately valued stillness. Take the philosopher Pythagoras, for example. He famously forced his students to take a vow of absolute silence for up to 5 years before they were even allowed to study under him. 5 years. They pursued meditation, extreme isolation, and deep reflection because they firmly believed that silence held an extraordinary power, a power we might be completely missing today.
The ancients understood one very foundational concept: silence removes distraction. It's that simple. When the everyday, chaotic, noisy distractions of the world finally disappear, a much deeper level of perception actually becomes possible. It strips away all those superficial layers of our day-to-day anxiety and leaves you with just the bare core of awareness.
And listen, this wasn't just some localized, trendy phenomenon. Across entirely different continents and cultures, historical seekers consistently withdrew from society's noise to discover truth. We see the desert fathers and mothers of the 3rd century literally retreating into harsh, desolate landscapes. We see Carthusian monks taking lifelong vows of deep, unbreakable silence just to achieve spiritual awakening. We see ancient philosophers who are absolutely convinced that true wisdom only shows up when all the external noise completely vanishes.
There's this profound philosophical consensus that basically says silence creates access to understanding ordinary thought cannot reach. Just think about that for a moment. This is the ancient agreement that external quietness actually reveals truths that are entirely hidden by our ordinary, noisy, busy thoughts. It's the idea that when the noise finally stops, a totally new kind of understanding can begin.
And we see this deeply embedded right into foundational sacred texts too. The Bible, for instance, frequently describes these intense moments of deep reflection that happen immediately before major divine revelations. Or consider the mysterious book of Enoch. It details encounters with celestial realms, angelic beings, and fiery wheels that completely defied all human language and ordinary understanding. Across cultures, it's the exact same pattern. Seekers entered absolute stillness right before receiving these intense, mind-bending sparks of divine insight.
Which brings us to this really provocative realization. What if truth is beyond words? What if ultimate reality, what if God reveals itself only when the mind's constant, exhausting chatter finally actually stops? Maybe divine truth simply isn't something communicated through words. Perhaps the very noise of our own thoughts is exactly the thing hiding this deeper reality from us. Now, I know what you're thinking. Entering true silence is incredibly hard. When you first try to just sit in a quiet room, your mind totally rebels. It gets so uncomfortable. It races, it desperately searches for stimulation. We have all felt that weird panic of just being alone with our thoughts without a screen in front of us. But here's the secret. If you push through that initial friction, thought eventually begins to slow down, and finally, your awareness deepens and your perception sharply focuses. Ancient traditions understood this completely. They knew that silence literally transforms human consciousness itself. This is exactly why we need to completely rewrite our dictionary definition of silence. True silence isn't just emptiness. It's not just the absence of noise.
It is a preparation. It's a highly active state of spiritual readiness. It is, honestly, a language completely beyond words. Silence is what prepares human awareness to actually become receptive to a deeper reality.
But to really grasp this language, we first have to recognize the fundamental limits of our own everyday speech. We rely on words for absolutely everything, right? But human language has massive restrictions. Every single word we use depends entirely on symbols, definitions, and mental categories that our finite human minds can process. So, they are incredibly limited tools when you're trying to describe the grander scheme of existence.
Just think about the concepts that our language completely struggles to capture. Infinity, eternity, existence itself, the ultimate nature of God. I mean, how do finite, limited human words ever adequately describe something that is inherently limitless? Ancient philosophers argued time and time again that words divide reality into these tiny, finite categories, and ultimate reality simply cannot be shoved into those small, human-made boxes.
And that leaves us to the core philosophical argument of this entire explainer. Silence is the communication. There's this amazing concept known as apophatic theology, or the via negativa. It's the idea that you can only truly know God by focusing on what God is not, because ultimate reality exists far outside the bounds of human categorization. So by that logic, entering a non-categorical state, which is true silence, is the only logical way to intersect with the divine. Where human language utterly fails, silence succeeds. It acts as a direct bridge to God. So what does this divine dialect actually feel like in practice? Well, it manifests as intuition, deep awareness, a profound inner conviction. It's that sudden, inexplicable understanding you sometimes get. Instead of spoken sentences, the creator might communicate through intense feelings and sudden realizations that are completely impossible to explain logically to someone else. It's this powerful transmission of meaning that skips the ears entirely and goes straight to your core awareness. See, we are so deeply conditioned to expect divine speech to be exactly like human speech. We picture a booming voice from the clouds, speaking to us in perfect English sentences, echoing down from the sky. But ancient wisdom claims actual divine communication is incredibly subtle and entirely soundless. It's intuition. It's silent awareness. It's a hidden connection. The creator of existence doesn't need to depend on human language, and silence is the only thing that allows our consciousness to finally recognize that connection.
And this forces us to ask a really tragic but absolutely crucial question. Did we just forget how to listen? Imagine this possibility for a second. What if divine reality is broadcasting continuously, all around us, every single second of the day? But our modern world, with its endless feeds and buzzes and notifications, is simply too distracted to perceive it. The deepest truths cannot be spoken, but we're just way too busy listening to the noise to ever realize it.
So, I'll leave you with this final thought. Is silence just emptiness, or is it actually revealing something much, much deeper about God? I really want you to challenge your worldview with this today. Perhaps the greatest truths about existence simply cannot be heard through words at all. Perhaps they are waiting for you right there, in the moments where all the noise finally disappears. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Take care and try to find a little stillness today.